Well, let's do this. Let's have a discussion about the Land 1.5. Now, just to look at this, what we call a white paper, which is basically a long document describing the ins and outs of how things work. We're going to kind of give it dissect it. This top part is Land 1.0, and Land 1.0 is basically what gets finished end of this month is the hope. Basically, we've already got the deeds, which is the ability to claim a location in land. So if we were to go over to land, and then we could see this map, there's the location, right? So that's what we got going on right now. We can get those land deeds and stuff like that. And at the end of this month is what they've said is we can survey that land. They've given us a little bit more information on surveying, or this, I don't know if this is from previously, but what you're going to find out at the end of this month is if it's one of these 14 different types of terrains, and then um, land rarity is what you're going to find. So we got a little bit more information about what's about to happen in surveying. We go down to land rarity, and we're going to see that there's a 75% chance that your land is going to be common, 20 for rare, epics 4, and only a 1 out of 100 chance that you're going to get a legendary. And so we're going to understand a little bit better as to what that means. And so far, the only thing it really means is this little production boost, but we'll talk about production boost. Now, the other thing that's going to happen in surveying is so you're going to find out again what 14 terrain types, and then what, what 4 rarities, and then you're going to find out if it's going to be magical or occupied. And then, of course, 1 out of every 100. So if you come into here and you see how there's tracks, like that, and then plots. So there's 100 plots in a tract. 1 out of every 100 plots, 1 out of every tract, I should say, is going to be a keep. And then 1 of those 10 keeps is going to be a castle. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. Those are very, very specific distribution of the land. The other is just kind of like a general about 12%. Could be 12.1, could be 11.9. It's just about generally 12% chance that you're going to get magical resources or occupied. And I want to say that they are going to do something, the magical, the occupied, are going to do something in 1.5. And then later in 2.0, which is probably the end of the year, if not a little bit longer, I don't know, they're going to do a little bit something different. But for 1.5, they're already going to do a couple of things, and we'll talk about that. So that's kind of where I wanted to start off with. We've got surveying coming up, and when you survey, you will want to buy one of or all 3 of these starter packages. Okay? Now, what is it that you're going to be able to do in 1.5? First of all, when is 1.5? They're saying end of the second quarter. So that puts it around the end of June, but we could be looking for a little bit later than that, would be July. So there's really nothing that's happening end of this month. We're talking like a week and a half, 10 days or so. There's really not much happening except for seeing the terrain types, the rarity, and if it's magical or occupied, and the 1 in 100 chance that it's a keep, and then the 1 in 10 chance that your keep is a castle. Okay, there's very, very little happening. I may make a proposal that the SPS that is being given to landholders, that SPS should go to those that do surveying. Otherwise, there is very little for any user. There's very little incentive for any user to survey their land until the end of June, maybe July, except for curiosity. And that's a big motivator. Curiosity is a big motivator, but I'm thinking about making a proposal to make that SPS that has been given to all landholders specifically given to those that survey, because it is of very high interest for the whole ecosystem and to you and me and to the whole ecosystem. It benefits if we get this thing going so that we're not stuck in the land. It's like we're claiming plots around 51 or so, and it's just have yeah, it's just a long ways to go. So, and also when you survey, you need to spend the money on the starter packages. So that would really help DEC have some trajectory, like some health now, as opposed to waiting until June or July. I don't really think we all want to wait for DEC to get back to par in July. Sooner is going to be a little bit better, and we have a mechanism to do it. So look out for that reward. Tell me if you would hate it or whatever. I'm not sure. It just doesn't seem like a drawback, and it may be what we need to just get all land deeded out and then surveyed. Okie dokie. So where do we start for land 1.5? That's just kind of the getting everyone on the same foundation. And I think where I want to start is at the end, kind of towards the end, is in this section right here. I think this is where you need to start. You need to realize that in land 1.5, which isn't the full game, there's more to it, but in this step, what is it that you're going to be able to do with the land? You're going to be able to put cards on it. What are those cards going to be able to do? First of all, those cards are going to work. All right, well, what's the type of work they can do? Can they be an electrician, a plumber, a doctor? Nope, they can do four things. They can do four things. They can farm grain. They can mine SPS. So that would change the system right now. This is going to be an easy one to demonstrate. So the mining of SPS, you get SPS for holding land. So they're saying in June or July, when this starts, that it will be distributed to the workers that are working hard on the land, and it will be distributed based on who's working the hardest, and it evenly distributed by the number of workers you're putting on to that. Okay, so you can farm grain, and there's some like calculations. Maybe we'll go over it a little bit later. Because you're going to farm grain, you could also mine SPS, and you can also participate in this little side game called The Secrets of Victoria. And so you can put some of your workers towards working on this. So they're like academics or something like that. They're like the academics, and these are the coal mine workers, and these are the farmers. And I said four things you can do with your workers. There's another thing. It's up here. It's called clearing the plots. So no buildings or any production can start. And I think, let's read through this real fast. I think that means you can't farm grain until it clears either. Um, uh, so it says clearing plots as with all construction projects will require a certain number of production points, which is what we're going to go over here in a moment. I assume, yep, down here. Please keep in mind that grain will also be required for workers to be able to clear the land plots. Initially, players will need to purchase grain in order to clear their plots. But after some plots have been cleared, those plots may be used to farm grain in order to allow more plots to be cleared. Yeah, okay. It didn't. I'm pretty sure you have to clear the plot um, before you can start doing these other three things, but it doesn't say specifically. Just a second, let me pause. All right, after reading a little bit more, it doesn't look like it's specifically stated um, uh, if you have to clear before you can do these three, but it does specifically state that you have to clear before you can build um, uh, on the land, doing what they call a construction project. And we can't construct anything anyways. So I'm not sure when this actual working option is going to be a thing. To be honest, it may not start till uh, it doesn't actually state if this is something that begins in 1.5 or it begins in phase 2. So this may be a phase 2 sort of thing. So let's go back perhaps to the working assumption that there's only three things you can do in 1.5, and that's farming, mining, and playing the side game called The Secret of Praetoria. All right, so farming, mining, and The Secret of Praetoria all require a thing that is called production points. So this is going to be one of your most important pages here, the production points. And I'll just kind of go straight to the table here. And a common card, one common card, one BCX of a common card will get you 2.5 production points. And if you had a gold version, it would get you 52.63. Very random number, 52.63. And then look here, the rare will get you 9.57. And this is the regular foil, right? The epic will get you 27. The legendary is 136. So technically, what's that, like 60 times more is what the legendary is going to get you. A lot of people are looking at these numbers over here, though, and recognizing that a max level version isn't actually, the numbers aren't too big. Rares versus epics versus legendaries. A max legendary is only 1,500, that sort of thing. Okay? And then, but you do have very large differences between the gold. 4,000 versus 2,000, 6,000 versus 4,000, 10,000 versus 6,000. So this is probably why golds, like the cheapest golds, went up a bit in price, and the legendaries went up a bit in price because, I mean, if you put a common regular foil in one of your 5 spots, keep in mind you only have 5 spots, with one small exception I'll explain in a moment. You have 5 spots, and you could put 5 cards worth 1,000 in there, and you'd have 1,000. Or you could fill it with just one card in there, and you'd have 10,000. Or you could put 5 of these legendary gold foil max cards, and you could have 50,000 production points on that land, as opposed to, let's say, 5,000. This over here, just to give you an example, we go to buy, compare, and we go to price at level, and we look at gold foil legendaries is 215. So if you had 5 of those, that is a little over $1,000. Whereas if you had 5 common cards, that's what, a little under $30 versus $1,000. So you could have 50,000 points for $1,000, or you could have 5,000 points for $30. So one of them's 10 times more. So even if you 10 times the $30, that's still only $300. So you could have 5, uh, well, I guess 10 lands, but then the land also costs money, right? So to some extent, yeah, I mean, there's some complex little math going on. I don't know if you followed along with that, but yeah. So the cards on it are only $30, but the land is also a decent amount of money too. So I guess it's kind of up to you how you want to do it. So you can have ultra beneficial, just a few plots of land, which is the highest number, the highest value of like just cards that are actually quite expensive hanging out on that land. And you may be producing someone with 10 times more plots. So I guess that's like, but those people maybe aren't buying their plots right now, so they maybe have plenty of plots. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so that's the deal with the production points based on rarity and the foil. Now there's a separate little thing. If they're alpha cards, then 10 times these numbers, 10 times this number, 10 times this number, or the max gold foil legendary alpha, which is an extremely expensive card. I mean, you could get 100,000 points, production points on a plot of land that has that, which it's extremely expensive. Don't know if it's worth it, but you could have a beta version, which isn't as expensive, not even close to as expensive, and then you'd have 50,000 points on that, or over here you'd have 75,000. Sorry, 7,500 if it's a regular max legendary. Okay. I hope that makes sense with the production points. I know that there will be sites that will help you calculate the production points, and probably is going to be peak monsters. So there you go. That'll help you figure out, if you put 5 of these cards onto your land, how many production points would you have? Okay. Now there are going to, what's a Rooney worth? Because uh, it's got a lot of things going on. So it counts as a max legendary normal. So it's not a beta, it's not a untamed or alpha. But what happens is that it gives a boost to the entire plot for the production points, which they abbreviate with PP. So I've got some fun jokes on that. PP. How big is your PP? So if we go back to production points up here, you could theoretically put these cards right here, gold foil, legendary, for $215 times 5. So that's 1,000, let's say $1,100 probably, something around that. And then you would end up with 10,000, 50,000. And let's say they're just the regular ones. Okay. These regular ones, they don't have the extra boost because the extra boost would cost 600 instead of 200. So we got 50,000. If you were to put Rooney with that, it would no longer be 50,000. It would be 100,000, a 100% boost, okay, to the entire plot. And they say already that this is equivalent to a legendary totem. So let's take a moment to go over to here. A legendary totem is also a 100% boost, and that can be in addition. So you put 100% plus 100% plus boost is additive, right? So the initial number of cards is 100%, and then you've got a Rooney on there, so it's another 100%, so that equals 2. And then you put a totem, that's another 100%, so you're looking at 300%, right? So that makes your initial, we had 5 cards on there. Well, technically, here's another thing. Rooney allows you to, it's somewhere right in here, plots that have purchased a power source, we'll go over that, and have a Rooney get to have an extra worker card. So that means 6. So let's go back to this. We have all 10 or 5 of these, and then we have a regular Rooney, okay, because the gold foil Rooney is $5,000, so I don't think you're doing that. So we've got 51,500 times 300%. That means you could have a plot of land with 154,000. But we're not done. We are not done. There is titles, which if you have one of these really high level titles, and the highest level ones are the Untamed, the Praetorian, and the High Roller. So we'll go to Asset Market, and look at the titles. So we have the Praetorian, Untamed, High Roller, and then they said custom ones, which the Grandmaster counts. So these 3, which you're seeing, they're being sold for, close to $2,000 on them. And the bids, which are my bids, are in the $200 range, which I could possibly increase, I suppose. But all right, that you'll get a 50% boost. So instead of by 300%, we're looking at 350%. So then it goes up to 180,000 on a plot of land. Okay, so we've gone over quite a bit of them, right? Rooney gives you 100% boost and gives you another plot of another workers for 1,500 core production points. Okay, we're not done yet. because we've got land rarity. So you need to do all of this on a legendary plot of land. So in essence, the idea that I'm giving you is that it could be 450%. So that means it's 231,000 production points. Okay. And then we're not done, because if you are doing okay, so we were mentioning there's three main worker options in 1.5. You've got grain, you've got mining, and you got Secrets of Praetoria. Well, if your land happens to be legendary and occupied, then your mining would increase even more, which means we would go from 450% to 550% if you put that land towards, all the workers working on mining. And that would be 283,000 points towards mining. And that's hard because obviously you can see that um, only 3 out of 100 cards are going to be occupied. And only 1 out of 100 cards is going to be legendary. So the chances of it being legendary and occupied are extremely small. Okay? But if you have that, if you have a legendary occupied, then you definitely want to put it into some heavy mining activities. Okay? Now, it's going to be a little bit more common to get a magical resource, and those guys are going to have a big production boost on playing that side game called the Secrets of Praetoria and doing the research for that side game. Okay, now we are not done. We've got a little bit of extra things here. When assigning plot, and we'll read a little bit. When assigning cards to plots, it's important to keep in mind that these elements receive production bonuses for certain types of land that they're on. Okay, so when you do the surveying end of this month, potentially, that you'll get some boosts. Now, neutral cards just don't have a boost. Okay, but there's no penalties either. So let's take a look at a potential card. Okay, a gold, because we're playing with the really fun, expensive cards, right? The gold foil legendaries, and we're looking at Hardclaw, and he's death, but he's the cheapest to get at max level, $215. Okay, so we go over here and look at death. If you get Badlands, Bog, Mountain, or Swamp. So Badland, Bogs, Mountain, or Swamp, the death is going to do a little bit better on those lands. And there's some that they're just don't put him in at all. Don't put him in those lands. Okay. So there's some negative 50s. There's a couple negative 10s, but the bonuses are just, positive 10. So if you really want to mine SPS, then what you want is a occupied legendary occupied, and you have 5 max level Harclaws and a Rooney. So you're talking $800 for the Rooney, $1,100 for the Harclaws, and 100 and land is, if we look over here, what does land cost? $165, and you get one of these, and it happens to have that small, tiny, fractional ability of being a swamp, magic, or occupied, a swamp occupied legendary plot. Then you should dump a bunch of Harclaws onto that thing and mine it up the wazoo. And what would that cost? Well, it would $1,100 for the Harclaws, $160 for the land, um, $800 for the Rooney, and and the title. What would the title cost? Let's see. $2,000 or $1,500. No, it's these three. $1,800 for the title, and then the totem is $1,800. Okay, and it's just going to be very, very expensive. Let's play a game. Let's see how expensive it is. $1,800 plus $1,800 plus 165 for the land plus 800. Well, let's see what the Roonies cost actually. I click here, and 444 is yes, 800. Let's say 800 because you're going to have some Ethereum fees. So $800 plus $1,100 for the R clause. So you're talking about $5,665. Are we missing anything? Let's go back here. Rooney, title, totem, land. Yeah. Yep, that's all the things. So, but the guess is um, if you have occupied land, and you want to buy aftermarket sort of option, it's gonna be a lot more than $165, especially if it's legendary. It's going to be a lot more than $165. Let's just put it that way. So, but if you happen to get lucky and get um, uh, an occupied legendary swamp, something, like swamp, then or anything really, because it's going to have a benefit to any one of these people. Doesn't really matter the terrain, but I'm just giving that example because the fact that Hardclaw, if we go back, sorry, into legendary gold foil, $215. So now at that point, would it be beneficial to double everything and go for paying, getting a bunch of these cards? I don't even know if it's really how possible it is. There's like none of them available. Let's look at this one, 800. 800 plus 1,000 plus 1,000. So you're looking at 1,800, 3,000, 4,200, 5,200 to get. It's like 5 times more expensive than getting uh, the heart claws, you know. So that's crazy talk. 5 times more expensive, and you would just be doubling your points, which is cool because you would go from like 280 to 500,000 points, which is awesome. But maybe just get a second land and do the same thing. I'm not sure. A lot of calculations are about to be done. This game is for people that like spreadsheets and math, and potentially a Peak Monsters feature that will help figure some stuff out. All right. Um, let's go back and run through some other things. So we are back to production points. We've already talked about why terrain thing helps land rarity. We've already talked about that. These are all just bonuses, right? Bonuses for titles, bonus for totems. They're giving some examples of calculating stuff. And then now it's a little bit backwards, in my opinion, because I introduced it by saying you could farm grain, um, uh, but then why do you need to farm the grain? Like, what does it do? Well, you need to feed your workers, okay? So in 1.5, there is no limit to how much food you can store. But in 2.0, there will be buildings that will help you with storage. And at that point, there will be storage limitations, okay? And you'll have to build buildings to limit the amount of grain, right? So it says here workers will consume grain at a rate of 0.01 grain uh, per base production. Now, there's a big difference between production points, like I calculated, that uses the bonuses like Rooney, titles, totems, and even occupied land, and the land rarity, all that stuff. All that stuff is bonuses. We're talking about just the base production. So in my example with uh, 5 gold foil legendaries and a Rooney, that was 51,500 base production points, okay? Now, if you times it by 0.01, that means to get all these workers working, it's going to be 515 grain per hour, okay? 515 grain per hour is what they'll use. 515 grain per hour is 12,000 grain, 12,360 grain per day. Okay. So let's keep going down here. So if not enough grain is available, then you can purchase. You could auto purchase too. So I'm guessing that's going to be enable a setting you can enable that will automatically purchase the DEC from the market, which is expensive. I think it's one DEC. Yes, one DEC per grain, but there will be local merchants like us, like me. I'll produce a ton of grain, and then I will sell it to you. So I'm gonna look at ways to put maybe some of those neutral cards, just produce a ton of grain and and then sell it for DEC at cheaper than one DEC per grain. Okay, because I assume I won't need everything that I get, and I'll hopefully sell it to you guys if the market is good, and if not, I'll keep it and wait till the market is good. Um, uh, Alrighty, but connected to this idea of needing the food and then um, farming grain. Okay, so let's look at it. Grain will be produced at a rate of 0.02 per hour. Um, and I think that's not based on the base level, right? So my base level was in my example, my rich, $5,000 example. Sorry, $1,100 example, I should say, something around that. It's I was needing 515 grain per hour. I had a base production points of 51,000. Now, grain will be produced at 0.02 per PP, not base. In the first production points example, the workers on the plot contributed 92,000, so this is the example. So I think in my original 51,500 times 450%, right? We were looking at 231,000 pp. So we times that by 0.02, and that's 4,635 grain per hour. So again, you're consuming 0.01, and then you can farm 0.02. But one uses the base, and one uses the full extended with all sorts of titles, totems, runes, and all that stuff, right? Even if you didn't have any of those bonuses, you'd still be, you could put miners, or I mean, your workers going after grain, and they'd still be producing more than they get. Okay. So keep in mind that the workers farming grain need to consume the grains themselves. And in this case, they will just consume a portion of the food that they farm. So they're just like walking through the strawberry fields, picking two, eating one every hour. Okay. Unless they have some big bonuses, in which case, like I'm saying, my bonus possibility would be like you could do a possible 450%. So that'd be like walking through the fields, grabbing two strawberries, and they automatically become 9 strawberries, and then you eat one. Okay? So you're getting 9 strawberries, but you're eating one in that example. I hope that's a fun way of looking at it. All right, but then we need to factor in the 10% production tax, which means we need to go to this section called taxes. Let's go over there. In 1.5, there's a 10% tax, which means, in my opinion, in 2.0, there's going to be different taxes. Probably, if you have different buildings, you'll be able to reduce the tax rate. That's the guess. Okay. So again, on your things that your workers can do, which is harvest grain, they can farm, they can mine, or they can play this research game. Okay. So if I am producing, in my example, 4,635 grain per hour, well, they're going to take 10% of that, 463, and I am going to be left with 4,171, keeping in mind 4,171, keeping in mind my workers are going to be consuming like 515. So a net positive 3,656 grain that I could get, which is at the price that Splinterlands is going to sell to you is 1 DEC per grain, but I could get 3,656, so that's like roughly $3.65 per hour. So like $87 a day times 365, it's $31,000 a year. So, I mean, there's one obvious understanding. Grain will not cost 1 DEC after it gets rolling and people start producing a ton. That's just how that's going to go. It's not going to cost 1 DEC per grain because even, I'm looking at 30, close to $32,000 a year if I were to get, well, I mean, it's not 32,000 because DEC is not at its par right now, but it will be at some point. So even if it was still at where it's at now, it's still like 25,000. And the hard claws were only the land $165 and the hard claw was $1,100, and the totems and the runeys and the titles were another 5,000. And even if you went on the land and bought a plot of land, that's like $4,000 because it's specifically what you wanted. Like it's still not. You don't have to worry about all that. So, um, well, I mean, you have to worry about that, but the point is, it would still be such a good value that you might as well sell the grain for a little bit less than the 1 DEC per grain. All right, and they're saying this price is purposely much higher than what is expected because it's meant to be a last resort or a way to get a head start. Um, yeah, so there you go. So, all right, let's talk about clearing the plots a little bit more. You have to clear the plots before you can build uh, any buildings or any production. Resource production. These are production. Okay, so I think I answered the question from earlier when I was talking about, do we need to clear plots before you can do these things? We're in the section called resource production. And so this says before any buildings, which is land 2.0, or any productions that you have to clear the land. So um, it's a construction project, and those assigned to construction projects, uh, okay, like keeps and castles don't need to clear their land. Clearing plots, as with all construction projects, will require a certain number of production points to complete. Total number of production points. The time required to complete a production project will simply be the total divided by the production points generated per hours by the worker. Now, here's a big thing. As a reminder, production boosts. What's a production boost? Land rarity, occupied land. Look at this section. These are all the production boosts. Runies, titles, totems, land rarity, occupied land. All that stuff do not count towards construction projects like building buildings or clearing pots, which is classified as a construction project. So remember how you could take the 51,500 base production capabilities, right? 51,500, and then you would times that by 450%. Well, that is no longer. Now you're looking at 51,500 per hour. But we're wanting a legendary occupied, right? That's what we're hoping for, a legendary occupied. So we need 18 million total points, and we're getting 51,500 an hour. All right, let's do the math. 18 million divided by 51,500, and you're looking at 349 hours. 349 hours. There are no bonuses, and there's no boosts from these things. It's just not 349 hours divided by 24. You're looking. That's not bad. It's am I doing this right? 349 hours. I thought it was a lot, but when you divide it by 24 hours, that's only 14 and a half days. It's not going to take too long, but yeah. And I think this must start at land. This is 1.5, but yeah, so it'll only take 14.5 days. But if you were, sorry, to take a land, if you were to take common max cards, okay? And sometimes these rare ones are just as cheap as the common. So we'll take that 1100, and no Rooney is on there. 1100 times 5, that's 5500, okay? 18 million divided by 5500 is 3,272 hours. Divided by 24, you're looking at 136 days to clear that land with kind of the, a $30 set of cards, basically. $30 set of cards will clear it. It's just going to take a lot longer to clear them. Okay? So clearing plots. All right. Let's pause for a second. To an extent, this table is kind of your table to understanding how good a land is, because they're kind of saying like it takes a long time to clear this, and they're in doing so, they're kind of saying how valuable this land probably is. That this is probably worth, let's see, 18 divided by 1.5. This is at least 12 times more valuable than this land. So if this common plot of land is, $80, um, then this plot of land is obviously worth at least 960. But the reality is it's worth a lot more than that, I'm guessing. A legendary occupied, yeah, I'm guessing it's more than 960. Just a second. All right, a couple things you want to know is that you could have a really awesome group of people that are good at clearing land. So they go in there, clear the land, and then you send in the actual workers, okay? But um, cards can be moved between land, so it will take 3 days of travel time, okay? So 3 days of travel time. And while they're clearing the land, and it took 17, how many days did it take? 18 million divided by 51,500, 349 hours divided by 349 hours. 349 hours times 515 an hour, that's 179,000 grain that it took them during that time to clear the land. So you're going to want, if they're clearing the land, maybe you need some other land working on just feeding these guys, of course, just like pumping out at least 515 grain an hour for 17 days straight, that sort of thing. You just need to amass a ton of grain to start working on those things, okay? Now, they're going to go move to another plot of land and clear it. Probably not a legendary occupied, because how many of those are you going to end up having? You're probably going to have a lot of natural common ones, and so those guys are going to clear. Let's put that up. 1.5 million divided by 51,500. That's 29 hours. You're looking at a day and 5 hours. That's it to clear this land right here, the common natural. Okay, so there you go. So they come in there, they do this heavy project, and so you want to put them, the big guys, on some of these bigger land, right? Whereas maybe you put your actual workers that you want to end up working the land after they're done clearing it on some of your other plots, right? Some of these smaller ones are just like doop doo doo. Let's clear it off, and then you move them. So Please keep in mind that the cards may be moved 3 days, so it's possible for a small group of high production cards to be used to clear multiple land plots, though it will be much more slower than having these cards available to clear plots in parallel. So having multiple groups and just keeping them on there instead of moving them. Okay. So, here's another little thing. Players may use a time crystal token. Okay, time crystals, I think, are purchasable, but you get them in a pack. Okay, so time crystals reduce or completely remove the amount uh, of these points that are needed to clear the land. Yeah. In which case no grain will be needed. Okay, so that 170,000 grain needed to clear this, or what's 29 hours? 29 hours times 515. That's still 15,000 grain is needed to clear these. Um, uh, and like you said, they'll sell you 15,000 grain for 15,000 DEC for like $15. Um, or in this case, you're talking $172, that sort of thing. But once I start mining my grain, harvesting grain, we'll sell it to you for a lot cheaper than that. So now let's go to the time crystals. Instead of reducing the amount of time that construction takes, which is variable depending on the worker cards used, each time crystal will provide 10,000 production points towards a construction project. Ah, all right. Well, 10,000 each time crystal is 10,000 towards a construction project. Okay. Now, just the only construction project we know about is the clearing plots project. So, if you want to clear a natural common, that's 1.5 million divided by 10,000. You will need 150. What are they called? Time crystals. All right. So in phase one, the only available construction project is clearing a common. We'll be clearing the land. Now they're going to give us an example. Okay. So, and I just did the math for this. That's kind of funny. 150 time crystals. No worker cards staked. So you don't even have to put worker cards in there and move them over. And then when they're done, have the 3 days to move around. No stake DEC. Because to get people working, you have to stake DEC. That's a thing that we're going to go over here in a moment. And then you won't need grain, which is why we just came here. We were just having a discussion about grain, and then there was like, oh, well, if you have time crystals, you may not need grain. Okay, time crystals will be tradable, transferable tokens that players can buy and sell. Time crystals will be available to purchase at any time from the local castle by burning 100 DEC. Well, that's interesting. So 100 DEC will get you. Okay, so let's do that. If I need 150 to clear the land times 100, you're talking about 15,000 DEC to clear that land, which is interesting because I calculated the grain needed by my gold foil legendary workers at about 15,000 grain. So that was interesting. Okay, that can be subject to change. But if we go to the starter packages, Time Vault. The Time Vault will offer 150 time crystals, as well as 15,000 grain. Okay, so you could use the 150 time crystals to just, um, if you had a common land, just boom, it's done. You have cleared the land, um, or you can put your workers on there and feed them while they're clearing. So that's good. So the time vault is awesome because now we really understand what it does. You get these time crystals, see how it's all kind of connecting, all the time crystals and the 15,000 grain. Okay, so you can use them or use the grain to get the people and keep the time crystals for some other construction project later on. Now, I would keep the time crystals, and I would maybe I would keep the time crystals. I would use the grain because the grain, mm, or you could sell the grain, I suppose. Now, when people need it, that's a possibility. Uh, or I don't know. I'll have to think about that a little bit more. Um, yeah, interesting. Um, okay, so there is a difference between um, when they did a proposal to propose these time crystals and stuff. So what they're saying here is that when they did crime crystals to speed up production projects, to speed it up by a fixed amount, they said, well, it didn't make sense. So because the constructions changed so differently, we've already seen that this construction project, clearing the plots, differs so, this is one day, 5 hours. This is 17 days. Okay. So there is a huge difference in how long those sorts of things take. Uh, okay. So time crystals will instead reduce the amount of production points needed to do a construction project, um, by 10,000, as we saw earlier. And then we've already talked about this. The only construction project in 1.5 is clearing the lands, and they can be saved for other construction projects. People are going to start having a lot of grain, so I'm not sure you're going to also get 15,000 grain. So getting using that, whether you're using it or selling it, just kind of like this needs to be gone soon, like right off the bat. You need to use it right off the bat. You need to sell it right off the bat. That's how that is. Just use it while it's the most valuable. Okay. Um, that could be selling it and then waiting um, until the price of grain drops, and then you can start your production projects, perhaps, or your mining. So your construction projects, or your mining, or your farming. So your workers can do one of four things, of course, is what we discussed early on, of course. So time crystals you can get by burning 100 DEC or DECB. We've already discussed that. And then I think um, in addition to a power source, okay, they're giving you an example as to why this is even more beneficial. Because when you're doing a construction project, instead of just paying for it with a time crystal, that you have to have a power source on that land, you have to move your workers to that land, and then they take 3 days to travel back. So you have to have a source on that land, power source, and then you have to stake 10,000 DEC, which is right here, by the way. We haven't gone through this. It hasn't been needful to go through this. And it was teased for weeks, if not months, up until now, that that a power source is all good and well, and you need a power source. A Rooney can be a power source, or you can buy a power source. And you're going to need one on the land. But then into that power source, you need to put these crystals. The dark energy crystals need to go into that kind of like engine. That's how I think of it. It's more like an engine flux capacitor. It's like on Back to the Future. He's got this thing, and so you stuff. He's got this things that help his car fly, and he stuffs fuel into it. You got the car. You need to put the crystals into the car. I don't know, something to that effect. So you're going to have to put 10,000 DEC per max level card, okay? Now, if it's like, I think the example they give, if it's a 400 BCX to get to a max common, then and you only have 200, then you'll need to stake 5,000 DEC. So, well, let's pretend we're just using max level cards, and so we're going to have to stake. It means we're not spending it, we're staking it, and there is a unstaking period, I believe. Let's double check on that. Staking is one thing, unstaking is another. Let's pause for a moment and I'll look. All right, there it is. Staking and unstaking DEC is a instant transaction. Okay. DEC staking is handled on a region basis for player. Okay. You do not need to manage your DEC for each individual plot within the region. It's just one action per region. So you can go like, I'll do 100,000. And then that's going to be like, all right, you've got the ability to do, like 10 cards, 10 max level cards. Okay. So I think that's why they're saying that it's beneficial. It just simplifies your life if you have most of your cards inside of one region. Okay. When harvesting the amount of DEC staked when harvesting, the amount of DEC staked in the region will be compared to the total amount needed based on the worker cards of each plot, blah, blah, blah. So you need to stake a bunch onto that land. That's why they're going over this when they're talking about the starter packages, because they're saying, hey, your time crystals means you do not need a you do not need a power source to do this action. You do not need grain. You do not need to even have workers on that land. And those the power source doesn't need dark energy crystals staked into it. You can just use the time vaults and get it done. So there you go. And with this package, you'll get what looks to be like 15,000 DEC worth of time crystals and grain that at the beginning is 15,000 DEC worth. So this vault is going to cost 10,000. Okay. And they're saying here, it could cost up to 30,000, but we're giving it to you for 10. All right. Now the grain is going to be worth a lot less, but at least you're getting these time crystals that are, at least 15. So there is a benefit. Let's see what they say on the finally note. Unlike the other two starter packages, time crystals and grain from the vault will be fully transferable tokens that will be added to the account for each package purchase. This means they are not bound to a specific land plot. These other ones, I guess, that means that they are bound to the land plot. So the little benefit of time vaults is you're just getting two new tokens, 150 of one and 15,000 of the other, just dumped into your account. Okay. So while we're here, do we want to go over the totems? I guess a temporary totem that will double the production rate of any plot for a period of 30 days. Unstable, because they're only 30 days, will become active immediately at 2.0. So you're going to get something at the end, starting the end of this month with the release of 1.0 that won't even be usable in 1.5. You're going to have to wait till the end of the year. But now's the time to get it. Okay. And then why would we want it? Because similar to building a box, the unstable package has the potential to provide a large head start for players who purchase them. This package will be linked to the land deed. We already talked about it's not transferable. And it will only be able to use on the land plot associated for that land deed. Okay, cool. And the production rate. So it's just a production rate. Yep. I'll just pause for a moment, just double check. And yeah, they're talking about resources being scarce. So there's going to be some other resources because the only real resource that we're doing is grain. Okay. So in 2.0, I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more than just grain. Okay. So you're going to want some of those other resources. And I'm guessing it's going to be like wood and stone. And I mean, if we look at all of the land terrain, let's see, land, where is it? Surveying. I guess they're not saying specifically what kind of resources these ones do, but the forest is going to do land, of course. And I don't know what these other ones do. Mountain, it's got to be stone. Uh, Jungle's probably some wood as well. Yeah, so there you go. All right, let's go back to starter package. So in all those other resources, if you want a 2x, like will double the production rate. So it's not 100% added to the bonus. Is this 100? I guess that's a question to ask them. We've got some time, but it's definitely worth $10, especially when you consider, um, yeah, it's got to. I don't know. So it's either 100% added to the bonus, but they're saying double the production rate for 30 days. If so, that's a huge deal. And if not, then it's still a good deal. I will be getting all of the time vaults, all of the unstable totems. All right, now let's go to the building in the box, which is a lot of people are considering this is kind of the obvious one. The building in the box package allows the purchaser to begin construction on a level 1 building without having to pay any DEC to begin a construction project. Okay, so the clearing the land doesn't cost any DEC, but this is the assumption. This is land point 1.5 doesn't have a construction project that costs DEC. There's no building that you're going to be able to build in 1.5. So we're kind of back in the Stone Ages. We're back, back living in caves, not in actual buildings. The workers are just roaming the land in like tents. I don't know, something like that. And it will come with a power source. So no DEC cost when 2.0 comes around. And in 1.5, you've got this free power source, which I believe is power sources cost 5,000. Yep, we're in the power source here, costs 5,000. But Aruni covers that. But Aruni's $800. 5,000 DEC is not even $5. So, all right, back to starter packages. It will still take normal amount of time for the construction of the level 1 building, but we're not paying for the DEC. So one would guess that the DEC cost of building is going to be more than $5, because all that they've really given us with the power source is a little bit less than $5 value. So one would guess it's going to cost more than $5 to build that level 1 building. Okay. And probably a good amount more than that. I could see even $10 to build that building. It's $10 a DEC, because this has to be worth it, right? Okay, for some context, we plan that even a level 1 building will be a significant boost to resource production. Wow. As compared to having no building. So level 1 buildings will have a boost on resource production. Those are, the only resource we're getting is grain for now, but then we'll have wood and stone and a ton of others, I suppose. And the boost is going to be significant, is what they're saying, if you don't have a building versus if you have a building. And as a result, resource production will be slow when land phase 2 is released. So slower than the grain farming, I suppose. Based on this, we expect that being able to immediately begin construction on level 1 buildings will provide a head start. And it gives you all of... Okay, so you're going to need to spend the time, but you will not need to spend the DEC or other resources. So, okay, take that all back for a second. The level 1 building may not cost any DEC, but it may. But it's for sure going to cost other resources, wood and stone or whatever it's going to cost to build that building. And none of that is going to exist at the beginning. And so they're giving you all of the level 1 that you need to have. So there you go. Which means no matter which building you choose, it's probably going to cost the same amount of, I don't know, maybe it's different resources. Who knows? Okay, so you're just saving a whole lot of time by not having to get the wood and stone and brick and mortar and who else knows what is needed to build a building. Yeah, they say wood, stone, and other resources, okay, are harvested and refined. So you take a block of, you take a tree stump and turn it into wood planks, that sort of idea. So that will be quite slow without any buildings. So, in my opinion, all three of these starter packages are pretty much needed. And you don't need to buy them until you survey. And I'm hoping that there's going to be some incentive to survey beyond curiosity before June or July. Okay? All right, let's see. It's linked to the deed of the house, and um, this package will still be able to use if there's a castle and keep on it. Um, uh, oh, and first level of the upgrades, which is okay. That's cool because it's already going to have a building if it has a castle or a keep, and they're just saying the first level up the upgrade. All right, so we went through, uh, you know, linked one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Let's look to make sure that we've gone through over the whole white paper, even though we didn't go through it in specific order. We talked about surveying. We talked about the starter packages. We talked about staking cards, uh, and that it takes 3 days for them to be unlocked, delegated, and reassigned to a land plot. Cards will stop producing on land immediately when they are staked, so they will not contribute it during the 3 days. And new cards. Oh, and new cards can be put in their spot immediately. So that was one thing that I was wondering. You want to switch out 5 cards for those 5 cards? You can do that. The cards themselves are what aren't usable for 3 days, but your land can still be usable if you put 5 more cards in there immediately. Okay, so that's one big thing. We talked about power source. Every plot needs one. Roonies can be one. You can get one in a starter package, or you can just buy one. Okay. Staking DEC, we already talked about that, how each max level is 10,000, and then it goes down from there. And that doesn't mean gold foil, and it talks about that in here. It says that it doesn't matter if it's gold foil or anything like that, or alpha or whatever, it's just 10,000. So if you get an alpha gold foil max legendary, congratulations, you have a lot of money. But secondly, it's 10,000 for that card. And then we talked about production points. This is kind of like the main page to go to. And then that the production bonuses, we're just talking about a ton of production bonuses, right? Um, so there you go. Bonuses and penalties. Okay. Land rarity being another one. Magic and occupied are specific in 1.5. It sounds like they're going to do a lot of different things in Land 2.0, but in 1.5 you're looking at mining and research having an impact. Rooney, we talked about how it has a power core, and then it has a production boost like these other production boosts. Also, let's go over this combined Rooney. If when it becomes available, they do say when available. It's not something that's possible right now. When it's possible to combine Rooney, um, they will act as having multiple max level legendary cards in one slot. So you combine a second one into it. You went from 1,500 because it's a legendary. You go from, let's see, let me go over here. It's a legendary regular max, so that's 1,500. If you combined two of them, um, sorry, let's go back to Rooney. Then you're looking at, you know, 3,000 for that one card is what you would have. Still not as good as a gold foil legendary, but it's still, if you've got gold foil legendaries filling those plots anyways, you could add that in there. So let's see here. Okay, the base production points for each Rooney will be 1,500 and 10,000 for gold foil. The base production and the multiplier will be capped at a combined level of 5. The base production multiplier, oh, you can't combine more than 5 Rooney together. Oh, well, I guess you probably could, but it wouldn't count more than 5 combined. And not the production boost, which will remain at 100% for both single and combined use. Base production. Oh, we talked about base production versus production boost. The base production multiplier will be capped. Oh, okay, so this is a benefit. So this is that base production that is mostly for when you're doing a construction project or for when you're feeding. Your food is based on the base production, okay? So your Rooney, if you had 10 of them combined, would only be 7,500 base production, okay? But if you had, but its actual ability is 15,000, of course. Okay, so that's pretty cool. It's an extra, like, this little thing is an actual extra benefit for combining. But your production boost that is described up here is still just going to be 100% the whole time. Now, Rooney will also give a higher chance of finding totem fragments. Totem fragments on land plots on which they're working. All right, well, we got to look at the totem fragments, but we've already gone over titles, totems, and we've done plenty of examples. So totem fragments. Yay, a whole another thing. It's a long video. It's a long video. Hope you're listening at 2x speed. All right. This is the one I don't know as much about, so we may read a little bit, okay? All right, totems. Some of them were already discovered in 2020, blah, blah, blah. And scholars expect that there are 30 to 50,000 more totems still scattered across the land. Okay, cool. Players will be able to find fragments of these totems in 1.5. All right. Fragments will have 4 typical rarity, and multiples of the same rarity will need to be combined to create a full totem, which will be equivalent to other totems that players already have. The totem fragments will be treated as tokens and can be transferred, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, in phase 1.5, the chance of finding a totem fragment will be 0.007 per 1,000 per hour. All right, let's take a look at this. My example was 5 gold foil legendary Harclaws and a Rooney. All right, so we got 51,500 divided by 1,000, so that's 51. So 0.0007 times 51.5 means I have a 3.6% chance. 3.6%. Oh, that's not base either. Oh, okay. It is base. It is base. It is definitely base. Okay. It is. So we have a 3.6% chance. So none of those boosts help. Except for apparently Rooney, because we came here from the Rooney segment. This means that the plot, um, uh, their example is the 6,000 base PP. Mine is 51,000, so I'm at 3.6% instead of 0.1%. All right, assuming 100,000 plots are actively being um, uh, this is let's do their math. 6,000, so 6 times 0.0007 times 24. Ah, yes, I get 0.1. So my example, let's see, is 51.5 times 0.0007 times 24. That means 8.8% chance of finding a fragment every day. So my example means that I have 8.6 times more chance of finding a fragment each day. Okay? All right. So now that that math is out of the way, assuming 100,000 land plants are actively being worked with an average of 6,000. Okay, so you're competing against other people, maybe? All right. That comes to roughly 100 totem fragments discovered per day on average. And there's 30 to 50,000. All right, well, that's not going to happen, okay? I guess we're not competing against other people, to be honest. You're just get a 0.86% chance, given my setup, that you're going to find one each day, okay? So 100 divided by 0.86, meaning every 116 days, statistically, is when you'll find uh, a fra- uh, a totem fragment every 116 days. All right, well, you find a fragment every 116 days. That's very slow. And that's from one plot of land, right? With a ton of cards on it. All right, this is a very slow rate. Considering in phase will increase considerably in phase two as land can be built out much more, and we want to ensure that 30 to 50,000 totems still take a number of years to be discovered. All right, players will receive any totem fragment found on their okay during the harvesting process. So you have to be doing harvesting. You have to be doing harvesting. Players will receive any totem fragments found on their land during harvesting process. So this is only during harvesting. Grain harvesting. Interesting. Okay. Um, Now you find that fragment every 117 days or longer or shorter. You could get really lucky. Could be day one, hour one. Um, uh, and then and then it has a chance of being one of these things. It has a 1% chance of being a legendary fragment. That's pretty low. It has a much higher chance of being a common. Okay. 1 in 100 chance of being a legendary, 75 in 100 chance of being a common. That's just how that goes. All right, there are a few ways to boost your chances of finding totem fragments and finding higher rarity totem fragments. Alpha, beta, untamed, gold foil cards provide higher chances of finding fragments. Why? Because you get more base, since they provide significantly more base PP. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Additionally, any land plot with a Rooney working on it will have not only double the normal chances of finding a fragment, so your chance right here goes way up. So that would go to 0014, I suppose, if it has a Rooney, instead of 0.00. Is that 4 zeros? That's only 3 zeros. Okay. So 0.0014 instead of 0007. Okay. Double the chance of finding, but also double the chances that the fragment is a rare, epic, or legendary. Okay, so these go up, double the chances. 2, 8, 40. Is that how that works? 2, 8, 40. So that's 50% chance that it's a common. 50% chance it's one of these three. All right. Okay. Finally, land plots with magical resource and occupied land plots. So magical and occupied will have double the normal chances of finding a fragment. So this goes up again to like 0.0028, I suppose. Wow. So to some extent, that's interesting because if you look back to where was that? Magical and occupied. That there was a benefit of using magical and occupied to do non-harvesting. But now they're saying there's a benefit to putting to using your magical and occupied to do harvesting. So it's just that magical and occupied is just awesome. Okay. Now it all kind of hinges on this one statement somewhere. Where was it? That this is all for harvesting. Yep. Okay. Players will receive totem fragments found on their land plots during the harvesting process. Harvesting is for. Let's double check it. Let's double check it. All right. Producing resources constantly over time. The resources will not be made available in a player's account until they are harvested. Harvesting is a very similar to claiming staking rewards. Players will submit an operation to the Hive blockchain indicating that they want to harvest their production, and the system will calculate the amount of resources they have earned, which the only resource in 1.5 is grain, as far as I know. Harvesting may be done on a plot by plot basis. It also may be done at the regional level, which will harvest the resources from all your own, so you're the current player within that region simultaneously. Harvesting can be done at a maximum of once per hour, or as little as once a week. Okay. And future phases storage requirement will limit how long players can wait between harvest. Okay. So maybe that means less than one. But for phase 1.5, a limit of 7 days will be placed. Ooh, that means you have to come in every 7 days or stuff will be lost. Okay, you're just gonna have your grain sitting not in your baskets. You don't have a building for it. You got like some uh, crappy baskets, and you've got a bunch of them. So you got unlimited number of well, not unlimited, but um, anyways, you gotta harvest them. They're sitting in the baskets, and you gotta harvest them, or they're just sitting out there on the plants, and they're just gonna go bad, fall to the ground. You gotta harvest them. And if you don't get them within 7 days, they have fallen to the ground and they are rotting. That grain is rotting and it's no good. The birds came and got it every 7 day. Some birds fly in and they eat your food, and you just need to harvest it or something like that. It's a dumb analogy. Don't worry. All right. The algorithm will look at the number of production points per hour generated by the plot and multiply that by the number of total hours since the last time that plot was harvested. Okay. Then it will be used to determine the specific amount of resources. Okay. Probably it's going to force you to harvest if you change something on the land. That's my guess. Um, okay. Next, the harvesting algorithm will look at whether or not the player has enough DEC tokens, stakes, and enough grain in the region to cover the power and food requirements for the worker. Okay. If the player does not have enough DEC staked, then the harvest output will be reduced proportionately. Okay. So if you've only got, you need to spend 50,000 DEC to stake on that into the power core, then you'll just have your grain reduced. And the same thing's going to happen for grain. If you didn't have enough grain for them as they worked during that period of time, then what they produced is probably, it's just assumed that it's been reduced, and then it's calculated that way. Oh, you can enable the auto purchaser to get that DEC. Okay, or just get it then. So just make sure you have the DEC you need in your account, or sorry, the grain you need in your account before you hit the harvest. Got it. So that's just an auto reduction. All right. Auto harvest. Anytime a change is made to a plot. I just mentioned this. That if a change is made to a plot, um, then it does an auto harvest. It just like triggers the harvest thing. So that means staking, unstaking, totems, titles. Like you're changing the dynamics of this production boost, or you're changing the cards, the base production. You're doing any of those things, it's going to do a harvest before that happens. Got it. It actually makes sense. This is a clever way of doing it so there's not tons and tons of calculations happening every minute. I really like it. Did we already go over taxes? Yeah, we did. We already talked about taxes, totem fragments, time crystals, castles, and keeps. I guess is one of the last things that we have to do. We did all of these things for sure. Let's keep castle and keep for the last moment as part of 1.5. Also in 1.5, they're going to do an automatic market maker. So it's a liquidity pool type system, which already exists for like DEC to DEC to SPS, or SPS to Hive. And they're only going to do this one for one single trading pair, and that's going to be grain to DEC. So not time crystals, not shards, totem shards. It's just going to be grain to DEC. So similar to how the Hive engine has the the pools that it does. Now, each swap is going to have a 10% fee. 10% fee each swap. So you could buy grain for 1 DEC, but if they have this automatic market maker, maybe you can buy 2 grain for 1 DEC. And in this case, each swap taken out in DEC and paid to the liquidity providers in proportion to the amount of liquidity they have provided. All right. So if I've put all of the DEC and grain into the pool, I would get all of that. But if I've only put 1% into it, then I'll only get 1% of 10%. So, which is 0.1% or something like that. Of a swap. Yeah, anyways. Some players may note that 10% is high. This is very different than a typical DeFi token protocol. Yep. So as we are trying to model land expansion loosely off of what real life is, physical economy may look like it in Praetoria. Selling grain involves things like a harbor, transportation costs, taxes, blah, 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 which are all part of the fee. In future phases, the plan is that players within a region can contribute resources to improve the infrastructure in their region to get cheaper taxes and better transportation options, like build up them roads, do some things, get stuff done, and then maybe it won't cost 10%. Your fault. One interesting thing to note is that providing liquidity will be one of the only ways that players will be able to directly earn DEC tokens in the entire game. But you're earning the DEC not from Splinterlands, but from the users that use this swap. And why are they using the swap? Because maybe they could get 2 grains for 1 DEC instead of directly from the Splinterlands merchant 1 for 1. So, and we'll just see where this goes to. Maybe it's 2, it could be 3. And you're like, well, heck yes. I don't want to get the grain myself by working for it, you lazy punk. You just want to buy it. All right, well, 3 for 1, perhaps, Maybe I'll sell it at that rate. All right. Transportation and bridging. Everything within the land expansion will be managed on a region by region basis. That means that grain that is harvested in a particular region will be available to be used in that same region. If a player owns a plot in different regions and they want to transfer grain between one region and another, and then they have to use the transportation system. Well, let's look at transportating, and that's probably going to, yeah, okay, well, they're saying this right here. Rain is the only resource available in 1.5. So it's going to apply to any resource, but because grain is the only resource, and that's why that's the only internal market pair is grain to DEC. Later on, there'll be wood to DEC and stone to DEC on all those other resources. But grain will be there. Now, if you are going to transport it, let's see here, will require 12. Okay, okay, let's look here. If you're transporting to another region, or this is a big one, if you want to transfer to another player, doesn't matter the region, you have to use a transportation system. The transportation system has a 12.5% fee, which will be taken out of the total grain, not the DEC, because there's no DEC, because this isn't the internal market. You must remember, this is just I've got 10,000 grain or 100,000 grain, and I want to take it to one of my plots in another region. Ergo, 100,000 plots, or that means that 12,500 uh, 12,500 will be taken out of the 100,000. Okay, and um, and will be burned. Will be burned. Okay. In 1.5, this will happen instantly. However, this may change in 2.0 as the transportation system is built out. I can see like there's going to be length of time it takes based on how far away you are and all that stuff, right? Okay. Additionally, ships will be available because Praetoria is a island, okay? And so to take it to other continents, other worlds, such as Hive Engine, there's a 15% fee. Um, the fee not only applies to transfers to external platforms, uh, the fee will only apply to external platforms. There will be no fee for inbound transfers. Yeah, okay. Transfers to and from external platforms will also be instant, and the fees will be burned. The fee is higher on purpose. So, grain that you resources in general, but right now there's just grain that you produce is a little bit more valuable because if someone else produces it and they send it to you, there's a 12.5% loss. Okay, the rats have gotten into your grain stock while you're taking your cart ride to your friend, your neighbor, like, but if it's all your own, there's no loss, you can transfer it in and amongst your own, unless you've got land in a different region, and then you've got a problem. You've got a little bit of loss, or that other land needs to be producing a little bit more. Woo! All right. So I do see this as a reason to consolidate your land within one region, or have a decent amount of land in the regions so that you can be doing the things you need to do, like getting grain and just, yeah, producing stuff. All right. The titles that we learned that there was a production boost on titles are also going to give you a RP boost, and that's RP. RP is what you need for. I believe RP is what for playing the game. Yeah, RP. Yeah, reward points for players in ranked battles. So if you and not so these are different titles. These are suffix titles. These are prefix titles. So these are definitely separate type things. But if you hit one of these, what you need to get them, right? And this, if you have 5 plots, then when you play the game, you'll get a 5% boost. If you have a keep, then when you play the game, you get a 10% boost. If you have 5 Roonies working on land, you'll get 50% boost. If you have a castle, 25. If you are the top research points, so that's secret of Praetoria stuff. Our research points. Yep, this is Praetoria research. I'm pretty sure. So, all right. Um, and okay, so for people can rent cards to work on their land, but they're going to have to pay 3 days on top of any normal rental price to cover the 3 day cooldown. Okay, that one's pretty straightforward. So if they rent for 2 days, they're going to have to pay for 5 days. If you rent for 100 days, they're going to have to pay for 102 days, basically. Now let's get to the last thing that I haven't gone over, castles and keeps. Maybe we could get this done in under 2 hours. This is crazy. Woo! All right. This is one I haven't gone over a ton, so we may read a little bit more. Uh, all right. They're giving some historical background. Ancient buildings. Okay. They're great. They're really old, but they have retained their magic that binds them one to another, allowing them to communicate and even transport between them. It is unknown who built them or why, blah, blah, blah. Each tract of 100 contiguous plots, 1 through 99, will contain one plot that has one of these buildings, and it will either be a keep or a castle. There will be 9 keeps and 1 castle in a region. An organization will be formed to keep their incredible powers secret. Many landowners will dedicate their resources to protect Praetoria from those who would seek to take it from them, using the magic of the castles and keeps to meet the dangers wherever it may arrive. In time, this organization will be known as the League of Averigo. Land plots with either a castle or a keep will still require cards to work on them. Okay. A power source or a Rooney. Okay. Some stake DEC to produce resources for the plot. Okay. However, they will not need to be cleared. All right. Rather than producing resources directly, the cards working on the land, cards working in the castle and keep, will instead work to maintain and operate the magical network between the buildings through the continent. In doing so, they will retain a portion of the resource production taxes collected from the other land plots in the tract or region, such as grain, wood, stone. We were talking about taxes, and taxes was 10% on all resource production, grain, SPS, research. Taxes will go towards paying the infrastructure shared and shared services by the castle to keep. The owners of the castle keeps will have the opportunity to capture a portion. Oh, the owners will just have an opportunity to capture part of this taxes, and the rest will be burned. So it goes to the castle and keeps, which we're learning about, that 10% of resources and SPS and research points for this side game is going to go to the castle and keeps, but the castle owner still works. Okay. Where was I? Where did I leave off? Any resources collected via taxes which are not captured people will be burned. Oh, they will. Okay. Maintain the magical network throughout the continent. In doing so, they will retain a portion of the resources, those 10% of taxes. They have to work. You have to put some cards on there, and you have to work hard to retain a portion of what could be burned. Okay? And so what makes me think is that likely other people in that region are going to go, I will help you do some of this work, and they'll be able to help. That's interesting. The total resources production is 10% for grain, SBS, research produced. 20% of that total tax income. So 20% of the 10% resources from the land plots within the entire region. Uh, okay, let's read that again. Tax rate is 10%. Okay. 20% of that total tax income of those three resources, because that's all there really is right now, inside the entire region, except for the keeps. So the other 90 or 991, the other 991 plots in your region is available. This said available, not guaranteed, is available to be earned by the castle owner. Okay, so if there are 1,000 plots of land, like the one that I was mentioning, all earning 515, all earning 515 grain. They're all harvesting grain. There's 991 of them. That's 510,000 grain per hour. What they're saying is 0.2, or wait, there's a tax on that, 0.1. So it's 51,000 grain per hour is being taxed. They're saying that 0.2% of that, aka 10,000 grain per hour, is capable of being earned by the castle owners. Available. So yeah, in essence, 2% of all of the resource production. So that's 2% of the grain, 2% of research, the research points, and 2% of the SPS. Okay. But we're already kind of giving an idea. It's, even if there are an insane amount of gold foil legendaries doing their deal, and lots of Roonies. You got 1,000 Roonies in your region. 991 Roonies in your region. We're still not looking at a huge amount. It's like 10,000 grain per hour. So it's not like crazy. I mean, 240,000 grain a day is nice, but that's the high end. It's not going to be that. You're looking at a lot of land plots are just going to have the $30-40 of cards working on them. Okay. 990 plots, blah blah blah. Oh, well, they're saying that the castle owner has the potential to earn resources equivalent to nearly 20 other plots. I didn't really look at it that way. Maybe my math is not as good, but I guess they know better. That's one way of looking at it. That's good. Okay, the amount of tax that are captured by the workers in a castle is determined by the production point output of those workers using the following formula. Tax receipts are captured. All right, take for an example. Let's say that the player harvests 10,000 grain The total tax receipts would be 10% of that, 1,000. If the castle owner in the region in which the harvest took place has workers that produce 50,000 pp in total, then the total amount captured by the castle owner would be 1,000 times zero point 0.2 times 50,000 divided by 50,000 plus 100,000, meaning 66 grain. So they've produced 1,000 grain. Okay, 66.67 divided by 1,000 is 6%. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Tax capture. So it gets close to 20%. Interesting. As mentioned above, the total resource production tax rate is 10% for all grain, SPS, and resource produced on the land plots. 50% of that total tax in each of these three resources from all land plots within the tract is available to be earned by the keep owner. This means that the keep, and you're earning a higher amount, but from 99 plots as opposed to 990 plots. Okay. This means the keep owner has the potential to earn up to 5% of all resource produced in the other 99 plots in their own tract. Okay. The amount of tax receipts that are captured, and so they've got a graph here. So it is what it is. It's just get your guys in there working really, really hard and put some of your best stuff in a castle or a keep so that you can um, take resources from what would be delivered usually to be burned. You can capture some of that from being burned. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a long discussion about land. Very long discussion about land.